MaJaMa Jams is brought to you by this moldy orange.
MaJaMa. MaJaMa. MaJaMa.
Who are you?
A friend.
Welcome back, everyone, to MaJaMa Jams, a show where we discuss other people's work to avoid doing our own. And at the top of the hour here, please, guys, if you haven't done so already, click like, click subscribe, click those notifications, because the paper world of MaJaMa just keeps on ticking, breaking movies down. Guys, welcome back to our couch. Once again, happy prime real estate season of Movie Land. It's July, and we are trying to just piggyback on the release schedule all month long.
Sick.
So what do we have coming out soon? It is Mr. New Head of DC Studios, James Gunn's Superman. So we said, hey, what if we did the 1978 Richard Donner, Christopher Reeves classic, one of Mateo's all-time favorites, very intimately familiar with it, so you know we got the background, behind the scenes.
The background
Behind the scenes information on lock. Matthew, always been more of a DC guy than me, and this is going to be an interesting discussion because I'm coming to this as the, perhaps one would say, cliche Superman hater. Never gotten into him, always thought he's a little boring.
Is that how a warped brain like yours gets its kicks?
And I think that problem kind of filters through this lens and continues onwards towards the path leading all the way up to Mr. Gunn's release. So we're getting into it today.
Also, you've never seen this. Damn it!
No, it's going to hang up.
No, it's let's see. Yeah, it's a spam.
Who's Pam?
Hello, this is 818. I'm sorry.
And you hadn't seen it before.
No, I had not seen it before.
Have you seen it now?
I've seen it now.
Oh.
So this was the virgin viewing. Mateo has seen it, I think, according to my calculations, 87 times. Matthew's been a good handful. And Matthew actually pitched it to me as a boring slog.
Sounds like it'd be a lot of fun.
Matthew, you're a Superman fan, but you kind of painted a picture of most of them being kind of boring. So we're starting at the Genesis, 1978 Superman. What is it about? Just before the destruction of the planet Krypton, scientist Jor-El places his son Kal-El on a spaceship to Earth, where he's raised by kind farmers Jonathan and Martha Kent. Later on, Kal-El discovers to have superhuman powers and moves to Metropolis to fight evil and become a journalist, not necessarily in that order. As Superman, he battles the villainous Lex Luthor, who wants to destroy California, while, as reporter Clark Kent, he attempts to woo co-worker Lois Lane. Other stuff happens too. So,
It does.
I went into this with your thing that it was going to be boring. And I don't know if that helped. Like when someone prepares you for something, your brain always expectations kill things, lack of expectations boost things up.
Preparing women for sex.
Preparing women for sex, keep expectations low. As long as you last more than 15 seconds, they're happy. You said 10, I got an extra 5. Finished myself off in the bath. But enough about my personal life. So Matthew, what'd you think this time? I'm curious. How many years has it been for you?
It's been a while
Been
since
a
I've
good
seen
chunk?
it, yeah. It's the same. It's good. It looks good, but I just find it insanely just boring, and that's half due to the time period pacing, but just also the Superman problem, quote unquote. And then obviously it's just some weird choices made throughout the film.
Can you read my mind?
Such as?
Spinning the Earth backwards, which somehow changes the how time works.
We're going to get into that. And?
I didn't realize we were going to be discussing this right now. I wasn't prepared.
I just said some weird stylistic choices. I don't know. You talk about the 70s pacing. It didn't seem excruciatingly slow to me. I like the opening stuff. Mateo was right that the expensive budget can be seen on screen, I think. Mateo, is this a big favorite of yours?
Yes, because it comes from a time where nobody was taking superhero movies seriously. Basically, even the same producers, they encounter resistance from Warner Brothers because when they say we want to do Superman, they instantly thought of
Holy sardine!
which was goofy and campy and everything. So they didn't really have that much trust into this project.
Oh, that's interesting.
And instead, Richard Donner treated the whole subject with respect and almost deference, and is not. Yes, there are a couple of goofy moments.
Bad vibrations?
But mostly is a story that is, it has ideas. Now, the fact that the pacing is different, granted, agreed. Still, I remember when we saw it in the theater, it was just like, seeing even those swooping titles and stuff, it was just like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like that before, because actually we hadn't.
You know, I did not, like I said, I don't know if you said that and it prepared me, and I was like, okay, it's not that bad, but I didn't mind the pacing. I thought it was going to be a lot slower. Here's the thing. You're correct as far as fighting, and again, the Superman is weird for two things. One, I think the Boy Scout angle, perhaps even leading into the bigger discussion of war is awful, but peace is boring.
We're all part of the same team.
That the Boy Scout kind of makes him boring to a degree, and then this is the strongest guy on Earth, practically invincible. Who do you put him up against? Lex has always been interesting because even though it's not, like you said, the only one that technically doesn't have powers and just has resources, it's like, okay, here's the invincible man versus a dude that's got a smart brain.
Lex Luthor, the greatest criminal mind of our time.
So there is
Which is a way to juxtapose your superhuman god-type character.
Yes.
To give him that type of villain.
I think there's obviously not a lot of fighting because there can't be. In fact, you might say none. You guys have to let me know how much that actually happens in Superman 2. But the disasters caused by Lex gives more action scenes in the disaster thing, the helicopter. Granted, okay, the whole movie is disaster rescue as opposed to fight. That may be more modern sensibilities with the slam bang Marvel, although I do love it. But I thought there'd be far more like, oh, Lois, look, I left my hat on the desk. Let me pick it up. What's the story for the Daily Planet? Up, let me go fly, and up, look, here's an ant. Oh, someone almost stepped on it. You know, I'm going to lecture you kids on not riding your bike in the street. It was not as you made it sound like.
Okay.
I had a question watching it because I'm coming into this kind of completely ignorant. How is, and this is more of a question for you, although you're a big fan too.
Stop touching our legs, man. It's gross. It makes both of us uncomfortable. We talk about it after the show, but you keep doing it.
And after I watched that Kmart training video for Aaron's harassment and everything.
Did you learn nothing from Walt?
Yeah.
Well, then you two have a great day, and don't work too hard.
How is Christopher Reeve?
Dead.
How is he?
How's he doing?
You know, it's one of those things that you come into the world and the doctor looks down and he says, kid, Christopher Reeve is Superman. That's just part of living in this existence. So it's crystallized like the Coca-Cola logo. And then I'm watching this and I'm like, I don't know if I'm taking it, like, I'm so used to him just being there. I'm like, how is his performance? Was he a nobody before this? Was this the moment?
He was pretty much a nobody. Very little things before, mostly theater, stage theater.
It's almost as if most people love him for such, but Robert Downey Jr. becomes Iron Man so much that at a certain point that's so accepted. Maybe like a young kid would be watching it and be like, oh, you know, does everyone like him as this? Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, I'm so accepted as Christopher Reeves as him that I'm like, okay, I'm watching this and I'm like, well, how is he? Do you guys think he
It's
sells
just factual versus any sort of...
Does he sell the aw shucksness well? Is he good as like the Boy Scouty, like steely?
I think yes. And
does he have Stark power?
At the time, they didn't want him.
No?
They wanted a star as Superman. But then between Richard Donner as well as the producers, they say...
The Salkinds wanted to go to Robert Redford and, I think Paul Newman and every major American star. And my problem with it was I would have a very difficult time seeing them fly. If you didn't believe Superman could fly, then you didn't believe Superman was real, and he was still going to be a comic strip. And I felt we should go for an unknown.
Eventually, they say, why don't we get an unknown as Superman and surround him with great names? Which was, of course, the strategy that they actually ultimately went for.
Well, it's interesting you say he's third billed in his own movie, similar to, doesn't Keaton come up after Nicholson in Batman credits?
Yep.
So it's interesting, these two, again, not first, but it almost, with the decades gap, you have to define Burton as first rather than West. You know what I mean? There's just a certain gap. So the first of both is, it's interesting to see that, how the titular character is kind of down a bit. Both would go on, of course, to being forever known as that. But I guess what else I was trying to say is I'm never approaching Superman the way that I'll be like, oh my God, I want to see how they did this new Ninja Turtles, or the way that Mateo would be like, let me see how they do the new Bond.
Any more at home like you?
Not really, no.
Your heart is really in it. I'm excited to see the new one. I've had varying degrees of fun with the Snyder ones-ish. This was all right. So I guess my question is, as you're...
Is there a question buried in here?
After
Somewhere.
6 months of intro dialogue, you're more, I think, of a fan, correct me if I'm wrong, you're more of a fan of the actual character in the comics, Mateo. You're more a fan because this is great classic filmmaking, if I had to distinguish a bit. But is this, beyond the problems you said, is this true to Superman? Do you guys think this is like...
My knowledge of Superman is mostly cartoon, Justice League and animated series.
The instruments in the watchtower picked up this anomaly a few hours ago.
Batman, it's really you.
Am I missing something?
Sorry, it's just that...
But yes, I think Reeve fits the bill of the Superman archetype of the good old country boy, raised with values, who has the powers of a god. I think he plays it really well.
I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
We now return to
MaJaMa. The San Andreas Fault, maybe you've heard of it.
Yes, it's the joining together of two land masses. The fault line is unstable and shifting, which is why you get earthquakes in California from time to time.
Wonderful. Couldn't have said it better myself.
It always looked weird to me. Always looked like a weird, like he's wearing, like a lizard man wearing human skin. But it kind of works for the alien thing, but he always looked very alien to me.
Mm-hmm.
But that may come, when was he in the accident?
95, I want to say. Maybe,
all right,
maybe
so
earlier than that.
So most of my life, I think I've known of him as being paralyzed, paraplegic. And I guess the stoic nature of his paralyzed body freaked me out as a young child. Maybe we shouldn't just... He was great as Superman.
I'll see you later.
And also, little known fact, or not little known fact, no, it's a known fact, but very few people know this. Clark Kent has, beside the glasses, his other disguise is that Clark Kent has the hair part on the right, I think, and Superman on the left.
No one's
so
gonna
you
that,
cannot distinguish them.
Well,
He's dotted every I, crossed every
F.
It is an ongoing joke, but eventually you come to realize that...
It's just got to be accepted.
No, not that, but
it's
the fact that the absolute bumbling nature, if you guys were like, hey, people think that this guy that's saving people off tall buildings is Jason Ellsworth, you'd be like, okay, the freaking bumbling, pathetic idiot that can't go on a long bus ride without getting nauseous. I understand, I have to spend my life with him, the facial structure is remarkably similar, but there's no way that my bitch of an idiot friend... It's kind of interesting, eventually you have to go to the philosophy of like, this bumbling reporter simply couldn't be. I know it might be shockingly so.
It's too bad Mr. Kent wasn't here to see all this.
Yeah, poor Clark. Never around when... Clark, wait a minute.
What?
Lois Lane, that is the silliest idea you've
Similarly, I said before the movie, it's interesting that as a non-fan coming into this world, it took me forever to realize that Superman is only strong because of the way our environment affects him.
His dense molecular structure will make him strong.
He'll be odd. Different.
He'll be fast. Virtually invulnerable.
I had no idea as an outsider that on his planet, he's just kind of a normal guy, and that it's...
That's why, in theory, in Man of Steel, the fight with Zod goes exhaustively long because they are equal. They are very strong compared to the Earthling. That's why they can go through buildings and stuff, but they are equal.
Well, it's interesting because this, Matteo, I know is a very classic spot, but let's just be brutally honest. In modern vision, this is slow as molasses. And I'm not even saying that because I found it that way today. I just think it's interesting that looking at the whole timeline as we approach this new James Gunn one, it seems to either be marred by, and like you said, obviously this has people who would die for this movie, I know that, but it seems to either be marred by a slow pace, or then what Zack Snyder did is just turn it all the way the other one. And you may say with this discussion of the most powerful beings ever, don't you ever want to see what they could do? And yet I feel like, I don't know, Snyder, like I said, kind of came into the scene and made a real obsessive cult that would be like, die for him. And yet I feel like most people ended up being like, you destroyed half a city with Man of Steel. But it's interesting how you guys have also said that the Singer version from 2006, which I didn't realize was supposed to be a direct sequel to this, also dogged by a lack of action and kind of slower pace.
Yeah.
And then the Snyder ones are dogged by the fact that he just slammed 6 monsters before shooting and had CGI artists like injecting speed to just get it done. So it's kind of this...
And it has Russell Crowe.
And it has Russell Crowe, which I honestly forgot until you said that.
This is madness.
So it's these exact parallel opposites. I'm curious if Gunn is going to find that sweet spot. He seems to be adept at handling this source material
Also,
so far.
this one is is treated with respect, but is more. It was something that in the late 70s people needed. We needed escapism, color, nothing specifically extremely evil.
It was very Super Friends cartoon.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's the funny thing. Me and Matthew love watching Super Friends, and we goof on one of the earlier ones. It's literally always an elderly white scientist who wants to, in the end, help the world. And they're like, I think it'd be good for all the turtles if I had something that sucked up all the oxygen. They're like, wait, that's not going to work. And I was like, this is what your villain is. So
That's
even though,
his plan?
even though
oxygen
here,
from the turtles, what would that lead to?
One by one.
Well, I know that this is like if someone was to I lent Clockwork Orange to a buddy once and he was like, dude, it's friggin' slow. And I was like, oh, really? I'm like, well, if you don't watch a lot of 70s films, the pacing might be off. So I know we're talking about decades and decades ago.
Many thousands of your years.
But I was surprised both by Gene playing Lex very charmingly.
Miss Desmacher, when I was 6 years old, my father said to me,
Get out.
before that,
but also how, and I know my comment is going to be like, well, dude, it was a different time, but the bumbling Abbott and Costello assistant.
you're followed again. Spite of those cat-like reflexes.
Which is beyond a trope. Again, maybe this is like, oh, I'm going to listen to Richard Pryor as a young comic for the first time ever. What? This guy's just doing black people, white people material. Everyone does this. No, that was the genesis. This is long ago. This wasn't fresh or trope. But with modern eyes, it was a little jarring to see the complete, almost like the way a MaJaMa would write it. Like if MaJaMa were to write a bumbling assistant, it'd be those type of jokes.
I did it, just like you told me.
All right, Otis, all right, Otis, listen, it isn't that I don't trust you, but I don't trust you, Otis. What'd you do?
And I'm not saying they're not funny. It just seemed interesting with the lag of how...
Well, also because it was because at the time, it was a very fine line that they were doing, because one of the most famous lines of, or at least words that Richard Donner used for this movie, it was verisimilitude. So the movie has to be plausible, even if he had actually a poster on his office that says verisimilitude on the cape of Superman. And
that was in my Marvel Studios book. Wow, I remember that. They mentioned that. They mentioned the word in the office.
So he was the first one who actually wanted to treat the whole thing.
Hold on. Time for him to outshine me once again. I'm sorry, the definition of verisimilitude?
Something that is plausible. Okay. That it has to be...
It's better than me.
It's from Latin, and it has to be similar to what is true.
I never lie.
I think in that respect, he did, well, other than that infamous scene, I think he did a pretty good job of that.
Yes.
Well, I would like to get into that because you said you had some behind the scenes.
Yes.
So if you're watching this and you're a moron like me that doesn't know this movie, there's a very infamous scene the guys have joked about with me for years before I saw this, where Lois Lane actually dies, and an enraged Superman starts flying the opposite way around the world, reverses the spin of it, which starts reversing time, and he then saves her, which is such an extreme example. And then
how do you even calculate how far you go back to quantify the rotation?
Dinosaurs.
Rotation with the actual timing of the incident.
Comic booky.
Well, that's the funny thing, because it is very comic booky, which starts a massive discussion, which we're not going to have, of comic books translating to screen, when comic booky is a very specific vibe. But it's such a ridiculous thing, and I have to imagine kind of infamous within the world, and oh my God, leads to the question, why wouldn't old Soups just do that for any problem he has? But Mateo over here says there's actually a reason why this idiocy is in here.
Yes.
No?
Hit us with it.
We now return to
MaJaMa.
So, in a ridiculously and offensive brief story of Superman, the producers, the Salkinds, they were just coming fresh from doing The Three Musketeers, which it was supposed to be a 3-hour movie, and then they say, no, this is too long, so let's split it in half, and so they did The Three Musketeers and then The Four Musketeers, both very successful. And because of that, they made a clause that is called the Salkind clause that says you cannot tell an actor, we hire you for a movie, and then we split it in half and we do two. You have to pay the actor for both movies and stuff. So they decided to do the same thing with Superman.
Of course.
After a lot of writing and rewriting and everything, they entrusted Richard Donner in doing both 1 and 2 together as a,
shot at the same time.
As a contiguous story. However, they started to butt heads, and the problems on the set and the special effects, which there were none. They had to create everything to make a man fly in a believable way. It took a toll on the time, and they had a specific date for when the movie had to come out. So originally, apparently, the first movie, the one that we just watched, had to end with Superman grabbing one of the missiles that Lex Luthor has fired, sending into space, let it go, it would blow up, it would free the 3 criminals that Jor-El had imprisoned at the beginning of the movie. They would fly towards Earth, the end. Continue. The second movie was supposed to end with the spinning of the Earth. It was that one that where the Earth spinning was supposed to
keep his identity a secret.
Yeah, there were a bunch of different situations like that. However, they were so pressed for time that they say no. They told Richard Donner, forget about the second movie, finish the first one. And how do we end it? Because they had to shoot a bunch of other scenes that they had to still figure it out. So what is a powerful ending? And of course, the spinning of the Earth was much more powerful than ending in something like that, especially if done very, very, very quickly. And so that ending went up. In fact, if you watch the Richard Donner's cut of Superman 2, there is the spinning of the Earth at the end, which was where it was supposed to be, and not in this one.
It's kind of confusing.
Also because in this one, it's very clear several times it says you cannot interfere with...
It is forbidden for you to interfere with human history. It is forbidden for you to interfere with human history.
It is forbidden for you to interfere in human history. One thing I do know, son, and that is you are here for a reason.
I mean, it's not like he's only relating that to reversing time, but like he's been interfering the entire movie.
Yes.
What does it matter now that you're going to reverse the rotation of the Earth, killing everyone, throwing them into space, possibly tearing the planet in two?
Still, it was...
Saves Lois, everyone's just flattened to the freaking ground.
it was definitely a much more impressive ending when we saw it.
Oh, that was my question I was saving for the actual episode. When you guys
You mean
first
right
saw
now?
it, was it this moment now? I was saving it for this moment now.
Check it out.
When you got... Feet?
Yeah.
When you guys saw it in 1978, was there any like, oh, come on, this is absurd, or was it just like, oh, wow, he spun the planet back, yeah?
We were mesmerized.
Okay, well,
all the discussions came after that when you were thinking about it. Say, oh, yeah, he said like this. But it doesn't matter. We were coming out from the theater so happy. Plus, in the very last shot, Superman smiles at us. Is the time where he breaks the fourth wall and he smiles before flying away. So we were just like enthralled by the whole thing, and it was
Huge
amazing.
hit.
Yes.
Massive hit.
Yes.
Financially successful, critically beloved, kicked
Yes.
off the career
Yes.
of this.
Siskel
made
and
Superman a
Ebert
thing.
loved it.
Well, a pleasant surprise this time. Superman is very entertaining. Kids should love it, even though it runs nearly 2.5 hours.
I was surprised that it had a sense of humor. The thing that surprised me about the movie is that along with everything else, it's one of the year's most refreshing comedies.
It kickstarted the whole superhero saga. It kind of like made the blueprint on how to make movies.
Because
about superheroes.
We have to, of course, give credit, as you said, to the Adam West Batman movie, but the tone was so jarringly silly, lovingly so now in retrospect, wonderfully
and
so now in
intentionally.
retrospect. Intentionally so.
Yeah.
Joker's good. What a kick turn.
But watch Batman trimming.
But this is kind of the genesis of what would become a relentless modern landscape of nothing but superhero movies.
A lot of people are saying, and a lot of critics and a lot of producers, they say, had not been for this Superman, you wouldn't have
Any of this.
Yeah. It would be a completely different
wouldn't have Madam Web.
landscape.
I'm so sorry.
Probably only Madam Web.
Now,
over and over and over again.
Yeah, it came out.
We're just a little over a decade to 89's Batman being another mega moment. Was it kind of a gap until then that another mega superhero cinema came in? As far as complete visibility, I don't know if any offshoots or little ones.
Well, there were the sequels of Superman, of course.
Okay, but as far as another character,
I believe
it was kind
so.
of until Burton dropped Batman.
Because Spider-Man was for television, and it was around the same time.
Right, it was like 77,
78. And also Captain America. They tried to do and then
but neither theatrically.
No. No, I think that probably Batman is
at least a big hit.
So
there was some theatrical.
And Batman was also considered. Oh my God, it's so dark. Which, if you see the Dark Knight or something, it's the Tim Burton Batman is kind of joyful and is kind of like a comedy. But yes, this one was the end. It was also, to a degree, nobilitated by the fact that it had great actors, even for small roles. And apparently it has all to do with Marlon Brando, because when he agreed to do it, then everybody wanted to work with Marlon Brando. And so that they started to say, oh yes, I want to be in this movie, I want to be in this movie, and everything.
It's suicide. No, it's worse. It's genocide.
Although...
Turns out... He was actually drunk as sleep in a broom closet half
Give
of
or
it.
take.
And when he did, hold on, there's something we have to make sure gets in this episode because I didn't know this, and then I doubted. I'm like, that didn't really happen. That's something you would say to make us laugh about the
fat
character
asshole.
of Marlon Brando. Mateo, will you please tell our beloved audience of 3 about the bagel?
Marlon Brando was convinced that Jor-El could have been portrayed as a green talking bagel.
Listen, there's no...
or a suitcase, a briefcase, something like that, because he didn't want to work pretty much. He was just like to say stuff.
Do you understand that is what an SNL writer writes to come out
I
of
want to
Brando's
stay
mouth?
on the floor. I'll still say the lines, but I want to stay on the floor.
Barely.
Agree? How did he come up with agree?
I have no idea.
I mean, I think that's a weird.
Yes, but
bullseye.
Yes.
Marlon, you've spent a serious specific. You've been thinking about this.
Yes, half of the island of Dr. Moreau, he has a champagne bucket on his head for no reason whatsoever, and he has
Kal-El could be a great bagel.
He has a white face. But yeah.
Speaking of which, do you have any bagels?
Richard Donner told him, Jor-El is being around since 1939. People know how he looks like. They want to see Marlon Brando playing Jor-El.
That's like my boss.
Think of the money you shell out for this asshole. And then he's like, oh, yeah, actually, can you just do the rest of my scenes as a talking bagel? Can we just sub me out?
Apparently he had
that's awesome.
$3.7 million and 12% of the backhand of the movie or something like that.
That's like me going up to my boss and being like, I know you asked me to clean the fryers, but I think this green bagel could do a better job. That would really make it easy on me.
No, but the green bagel told me not to do it, so I didn't. Because it was very convincing.
Dude, I would give anything. Of all the anecdotes over all these 100+ Jams episodes behind the scenes, I would give anything to be a fly on the wall in the moment in human history where Marlon Brando, and everyone had to listen because he was already Marlon Brando, was saying, what if this character is a green bagel? And it's the type of thing where if some idiot production assistant said it, Richard Donner probably would have punched him in the throat in front of everyone and been like, if anyone says anything as dumb as what this asshole just said, I'm going to shoot every last one of you. But because it was Marlon Brando, people had to listen. They probably had to fake eye contact and make nodding and be like, okay, maybe. That's the best thing I've ever heard.
Someone write it down. We'll write it down. We'll circle back to it.
And then they just write down asshole.
Well, then again, they did the bagel in...
What is that? I got bored one day, and I put everything on a bagel. Everything.
See, Brando was ahead of his time. Yes. We all applauded it when it was the center of the universe and everything everywhere all at once. Kudos to Brando. All right, so, they ended up getting him. He's a fifth of the movie's budget as his salary, so he has 10 minutes of mumbling through. Although I will say, the intro, the whole scene on the planet, I liked the way the fortress looked. They had kind of a day glow effect to the robe. Brando actually looks good for what it is. The classic hair swoop, very comic booky, what I would imagine it. As a virgin to it, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I'm intrigued in general by this character because, okay, so you guys have basically said 3 and 4 become utter, don't need to exist, later franchise garbage. And now my question is, I know the Donner cut of 2 is seen as kind of an Empire Strikes Back-esque high point of the series. Is the non-Donner cut kind of eh?
Yeah.
Like real eh?
It's good, but it has too much comedy and slapstick. Because at a certain point, the relationship between Brando and the producers, the Salkinds, were so fraught that they called Richard Lester, the director of The Three Musketeers, to be a mediator between the two of them. And eventually they let Richard Donner go, and they told Richard Lester, you finish the movie. But I think that a director, in order to have a credit directed by, he or she has to shoot at least 65% of the movie. And the movie was already 80% done.
Guys, we're at 64. I just need to direct 1% more of this movie.
He reshot a bunch of stuff. He had a bunch of gags.
Just because.
Just because, to get the credit for the
I don't know if I was introduced to 2 with the Donner cut. I don't know if I've actually seen the original theatrical release of it.
Oh, you were introduced with the Donner cut, you said. Yeah. So my question is, Mateo, if that Donner cut had not surfaced, would it pretty much be like 1 is the iconic kickoff, it's a moment of film history, and then 3 just whatever the hell's? Or is 2 not that? 2 is not, doesn't have the stink of 3 and 4.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find out as an outsider to the franchise.
2 is still entertaining, is enjoyable, and it's fun, and it continues the story.
Okay, right, because they shot simultaneously.
And 3, it was just like it's a Richard Pryor vehicle with Superman every now and again. And 4, it was done by Canon Group, which cut the budget, I think, if memory serves, from 36 million to 17. So eventually they reused the shots. The special effects are just like pathetic, and it's just like really is more
really homoerotic.
Yeah. Well, I was building this up to ask, do we get any decent actual superhero-esque fighting scenes in 2 Donner cut?
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
do we not get them anywhere else in the series? So it's pretty much 2, and then we don't really see fighting from him. And then Superman Returns, we also don't really see fighting because Singer is very reverent about the idea of children's anuses. And then when we get to Zack Snyder, he's like, I need someone to inject adrenaline under my taint, and we're going to make 16 hours of them destroying buildings. If anyone questions me, I'm going to start punching holes in the wall like a 13-year-old denied Papa Roach tickets in '98.
Did he have a small boy under the director's chair with a syringe?
Absolutely.
And it hurts, doesn't it?
Sit back, Zach.
All right, here we go.
Lower.
Everybody ready for this to kick in? And into Zach's tape we go. Let's shoot! I'm just fascinated by how much it seems like it's exact opposites, especially, like I said, continuing with Returns.
2 different ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. Well, almost like we talk about Batman and Ninja Turtles are interesting in that they can be goofball as hell, Adam West, 80s cartoon, or dark as hell, original source material, A Million Things with Batman. Similar here, he's not much as known for that, but that's where kind of Snyder took him.
Yeah, different tones.
Have you seen all 4?
I don't think I've seen 4 all the way through. I've definitely seen big chunks of it, and I think I would actually be more interested to watch 4 because I remember just 3 being just very painful.
Yes.
Does he get billing below Pryor in 3?
No,
I was going to say this guy can't catch a break.
Is the first, but still, it's just like Richard Pryor's story and stuff and everything, and it's just like weird.
What's wrong with it?
And of course,
very, very odd.
Yeah.
Of course, it goes without saying, I already know what the plot of it is because of the immortal line from Office Space.
Every time there's a bank transaction where interest is computed, thousands a day, the computer ends up with these fractions of a cent, which it usually rounds off. But what this does is it takes those little remainders and puts it into an account.
This sounds familiar.
Yeah, they did in Superman 3.
There is the one shot of the sister of the villain who gets absorbed by the computer that gave nightmares to a whole generation.
This?
And Donner never came back after this.
He was fired, and they just negotiated to do the Donner's cut in 2006, I think.
Oh wow!
Something
Around
like
the
that.
time we came acquaintance with the Italian here, ish.
No.
Something
I
like
mean,
that.
yes.
Wow, that's okay. That puts an interesting timeline on it. That took
Maybe
decades.
Yeah.
Many thousands of your years.
Well, a moment in history. I was going to say earlier, this is kind of to the superhero genre. Jaws is to sharksploitation. Again, Jaws is more of a concrete, definite trace to there. But this almost is kind of the same. Maybe this and Batman, but like you said, this is so ahead, this gets the spot.
For a theatrical blockbuster, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So you couldn't point to anything else, honestly.
And it was, once again, I remember when we watched it the first time, that it was the equivalent of Star Wars for science fiction, that you would see things that you had never seen before, and they were plausible.
Guys, perhaps we should assess our feelings on this iconic piece of superhero cinema by throwing these pieces of paper. I'm going to take a minute to gather myself. Who wants to kick it off? You guys probably have some definite ideas about this old battle axe.
I'll go right in the middle at 2.5.
Wow.
Wow!
It's kind of what I was planning.
I have a lot of respect for it, but it's just, to me, my eyes, it's very boring and long.
I just go with half. I love this movie. This being in my infancy. There are minor things, and mostly.
Can you read my mind?
Yeah, why? Can you read my mind, Superman?
Yeah, it was supposed to be.
The scene of them flying period is long as hell.
Yes.
And then you add a friggin' poem from like 5th grade English class. Cut it out.
This velocity feels weird against my breasts. They're ready for your face. I'm going to go with 1, 2, and the old Rippy Lou, as we say here on the...
We don't say that.
2.5. The reason being...
Yeah, we never say Rippy Lou, by the way.
I mean, gentlemen, the joke was that you say that when we don't say it. Come on.
The joke was that we don't say it.
I was a little pleasantly surprised. I wasn't enthralled, but Matthew pitched it as really boring. I think that helped me get more into it. I agree with Mateo. Budget seems nice on screen. I respect its position in cinema, and I'm actually bumping it up. I was going to do a 3, but I think hearing about its position in cinema and seeing that it actually is pretty well orchestrated, just perhaps of its time a little bit. 2.5 right down the middle, because I can respect what it did. But I think soup will just never be my guy. It's kind of like, are you a dog person or a cat person? Are you a weed person? Or are you an alcohol person? It's kind of Batman and Superman. Most people tend to lean one way.
There's a lot more animals and drugs than those two.
Yeah, but those are the big discussions.
MaJaMa.
It is kind of interesting that we have our milestones of Superman 78. That was a moment. Tim Burton's Batman 89. That was a moment. And 2002's Raimi's Spider-Man. We always say those are the biggest 3 names in superheroes, and all 3 debut kind of shook the earth and led to the omnipresence we see now, guys. Guys, thank you again for joining us on the couch here. We got one more coming up. We're going to be doing one of the Fantastic Fours. You don't know which. It's a surprise because we
don't know which.
We don't know either. I was like, oh, this show's fucking, we don't know what's going on. But we're going to be ending the month with that since Marvel is releasing theirs. Is it going to bomb? We don't know. Me and Matthew were a little trepidatious. But if you love summer movies, you came to the right spot because we're going to be mirroring what is going on all month long. And also, I think we got Shark Week coming up. So exciting times on the couch from us to you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you drop that comment, join in the discussion. If you guys like Superman, if you're looking forward to it. And from our couch to yours, this has undeniably been a... Jams. Can you read my mind?
MaJaMa. MaJaMa.
Jor-El, be reasonable. The Council has already evaluated this outlandish theory of yours.
My friends, you know me to be neither rash nor impulsive.